working in the spirit of the Golden Empire. This is 17 News at noon.
Good afternoon and thanks for joining us for the news at noon. I'm Alex Fisher. Men and women in blue across the state are mourning today the loss of one of their own. A Sacramento police officer was shot and killed while responding to a domestic disturbance call. It all started late yesterday afternoon. 26-year-old officer Tara O'Sullivan responded to the call. A man arrived with a rifle and shot her. He then barricaded himself inside the home, firing at several officers several times as they tried to reach O'Sullivan, who just laid outside the home. She died at the hospital earlier this morning. The nearly 12-hour standoff ended early this morning when the suspect surrendered. Their city's mayor grieving alongside the department and hopes the sacrifice she made will inspire other young women to pursue a career in law enforcement.
At such a young age, to dedicate yourself to the public service in a most dangerous profession, but in a profession where you can constantly be about helping people. I mean, what a role model. What an incredible role model. And the fact that she was a young woman, just like Natalie Corona, it's breaking barrier. It's breaking barriers. I hope she's remembered for that, and it inspires other young women to choose not just careers in public services, but careers in law enforcement.
O'Sullivan graduated from the police academy in December. She was just about to wrap up her training and was about to begin patrolling on her own in just a few weeks. Bakersfield police are paying tribute to O'Sullivan, and the Sacramento Police Department posting this message along with a picture of the fallen officer. It reads, in part, "We are so sorry for your loss. Our thoughts and prayers are with the SPD and the family of Officer Tara O'Sullivan. Rest easy, sister. We have the watch from here." And the Sheriff's Office lowered its flags to have staff in honor of O'Sullivan as well. Lawmakers are expected to vote today on a controversial bill that would change when police can use deadly force. Last month, the hotly debated use of force bill passed with bipartisan support in the Assembly, and this week the bill is moving through the Senate. Lawmakers are expected to vote on it today, and if passed, it would then head to the governor's desk for approval. The bill would change the standard for when police can use deadly force from reasonable to necessary. It also has a companion bill that aims to address racial issues with better training for officers. The Bakersfield Police Department is addressing the use of deadly force. BPD is once again partnering with Compassion Church and Greater Bakersfield Legal Assistance for a public forum. They'll go over the department's protocol for deadly force and offer simulations similar to actual police training. BPD held a similar event last month and says the response was so positive, the department decided to host another. It's happening tonight at 6 o'clock at the Compassion Christian Center on 4th Street. Two U.S. defense officials tell NBC News that a drone from the U.S. was shot down in international airspace above the Strait of Hormuz today, contradicting a claim by Iran's Revolutionary Guard that it had shot down the aircraft after it entered that country's airspace. NBC's Bill Neely has more.
The U.S. military says one of its Global Hawk drones was shot down by a surface-to-air missile overnight in an unprovoked attack. Iran claims the drone violated its airspace. The U.S. says it happened over the Straits of Hormuz, international airspace, and that no U.S. aircraft flew over Iran. Iranian state TV announced the attack within hours, identifying the drone as a Global Hawk, saying the country's elite Revolutionary Guard had shot down a U.S. spy drone. The Guard commander says the shooting down sends a clear message to America, and that while Iran doesn't want war, it's ready for it. It's the second time in a week that Iran has fired at a U.S. surveillance drone, the last just hours before two oil tankers were attacked in the same area. Iran denies involvement. The latest overnight incident comes a day after a rocket hit the headquarters of the U.S. oil company ExxonMobil in Iraq, forcing the evacuation of 21 workers, an attack blamed on Iranian-backed militias. Just hours before the attack, former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice spoke about the rising tensions with Iran.
It's a dangerous moment because the Iranians are reckless And the Iranians are the troublemakers in the Middle East. They're the most troublemaking, dangerous power in the Middle East.
All this as another 1,000 American troops are being sent to the region to join a U.S. carrier strike group and Air Force bombers.
No question this is a serious provocation. President Trump said those tanker attacks were very minor. He said last night, don't worry about a thing. But Iranian troops shooting down a U.S. military aircraft, well, that is a very different and very direct challenge. Bill Neely, NBC News, Doha, Qatar.
And earlier this morning, President Trump responded to those attacks, saying it was a big mistake.
You'll find out. You'll find out. I mean, obviously, you know, we're not going to be talking too much about it. You're going to find out. They made a very big mistake.
Moving on now, several people are without a place to stay after flames ripped through their South Bakersfield apartment building. The fire broke out just after 3 o'clock yesterday in an apartment complex on South M Street near Wilson Road. It took firefighters about 20 minutes to knock down those flames. They saved 10 apartments, but flames badly burned 4 others. Luckily, no one was hurt. And right now, there's no word on what sparked that blaze. Issues of race suddenly front and center in the 2020 battle for the White House. Joe Biden says he will not apologize for touting his work with segregationist senators in the 1970s, despite an outcry from his Democratic rivals. Here's NBC's Peter Alexander.
Overnight, former Vice President Joe Biden firing back at his critics.
There's not a racist bone in my body. I've been involved in civil rights my whole career. Period.
How does it feel that your Democratic rivals are implicitly saying that you have issues talking about race?
They know better.
The Democratic frontrunner on defense and digging in after touting his working relationship with 2 segregationist senators during the 1970s, Mississippi's James Eastland and Georgia's Herman Talmadge, both Democrats. Senator Cory Booker blasting Biden's comments as wrong, calling on him to apologize. Biden defiant.
Cory should apologize. He knows better.
Booker responding overnight.
So for his posture to be to me, I've done nothing wrong, you should apologize, I'm not a racist, is so insulting and so missing the larger point that he should not have to have explained to him.
Several of Biden's 2020 rivals pouncing, aiming to cast him as out of step with an increasingly progressive Democratic Party.
To coddle the reputations of segregationists, of people who, if they had their way, I would literally not be standing here as a member of the United States Senate, is, I think, it's misinformed and it's wrong.
I don't think that you should be bragging about working on a bipartisan basis with segregationists.
The firestorm starting Tuesday during a fundraiser when Biden touted the civility that once existed during his early days in the Senate, stressing the need to reach political consensus. Eastland once called African Americans an inferior race and said this on Today in 1957.
The separation of the races promotes harmonious race relations.
Biden explaining he worked to combat Eastland's segregationist views during their time on the Senate Judiciary Committee, pushing to extend the Voting Rights Act.
You don't have to like the people in terms of their views, but you just simply make the case and you beat them.
Peter Alexander reporting. Another big shakeup at the Bakersfield, California, and 17 News has learned at least 6 employees of the newspaper will be laid off, including some who have been there for decades. Sources familiar with the matter say those employees were given notice yesterday. The layoffs include people who work in copy editing, graphic design, and sales, as well as the paper's vice president and executive editor. The layoffs come several weeks after the paper was bought, ending 122 years of family ownership. You can read more about the reported layoffs and what lies ahead for the paper on our website, kget.com. Welcome back. It appears some changes may be in the offering, or maybe coming for this year's 4th of July celebrations in Washington, and that's raising some eyebrows. The new additions proposed to the 4th of July celebrations have some of the president's critics concerned the festivities could become more political than patriotic, setting up fireworks of a different kind over the holiday. Here's NBC's Hallie Jackson.
The country has celebrated its independence for 242 years, but this year may stand alone.
On July 4th in Washington, D.C., come on down. We're going to have a big day.
Not just the usual fireworks. Think music, military demonstrations, even a reported Air Force One flyover above the National Mall. And as Donald Trump tweeted, an address by your favorite president, me.
We're going to have hundreds of thousands of people. We're going to celebrate America.
Now, critics are accusing President Trump of hijacking the celebration, making it less about the country and more about the man who runs it. In a letter to the administration, Congressman Steny Hoyer and other House Democrats say they worry about the appearance of a televised partisan campaign rally on the Mall at public expense.
That's not what July 4th is about. It's not about politics in the partisan sense. It's about democracy. It's about freedom.
And they're concerned about the cost to taxpayers who could foot a bigger bill. The president inspired by this impressive display that delighted him in France, a Bastille Day celebration he called one of the greatest parades he's ever seen.
I think we're going to have to start looking at that ourselves. So we're actually thinking about 4th of July, Pennsylvania Avenue, having a really great parade to show our military strength.
Plenty of presidents have participated in July 4th festivities before, but only President Harry Truman has taken an active role, delivering a speech about the Korean War decades ago.
I think we've been missing the boat, frankly, to show off our military, because we should be proud of them and we should be proud of what they do for us.
That's probably just feeding more of his ego. I don't think we need to spend money on that.
Welcome back in your 17 Business Watch and checking Wall Street. The Dow Jones spending majority of the day in the green. It's up 221 points right now. S&P 500 up 25, NASDAQ up 53. Meantime, checking oil prices, West Texas Intermediate is at $56.88 a barrel, and Midway Sunset is at $59.51 a barrel. Driving with no hands, once thought of as a futuristic dream, is now becoming a reality. Charlie Wojciechowski introduces us to a Midwestern company that's developing 3D maps which are shaking up the self-driving car industry.
It looks like any other car on the highway.
Ready? Yep, go ahead. Enabling? Yep. Enabling.
But inside this Ford Fusion, a computer is doing the driving.
We'll keep itself within a lane. We'll steer to keep itself within the lane. We'll also be able to automatically change lanes by itself.
Sanjay Sood oversees a team of programmers and researchers working on the next generation of self-driving or autonomous cars.
We'll start seeing level 3 vehicles that can do essentially full driving on the highway being released in the next year or two.
Although this vehicle does have sensors on board, what's important about this drive is it's all happening because of the map installed on the vehicle in the first place. That layered HD map is created by Chicago-based HERE Technologies.
The road model contains all the rules of the road, speed limits, turn restrictions, topology of how lanes merge and split.
The map works with a more precise form of GPS. This car can even change lanes by itself.
Safety is paramount in our industry, not just for the people who want to be riding in the cars, but for the people who are building the cars, working on the technology. We're building them to be safer.
The goal is to reduce or eliminate the almost 40,000 deaths each year attributed to bad drivers.
It's a very exciting time, and Chicago definitely has a role to play in terms of being part of that ecosystem for self-driving vehicles.
Vehicles will soon be sharing the expressway with.
And HERE Technologies builds their specialized maps through a process called terrestrial capture. It involves the use of those cars you may have seen driving around with cameras mounted to poles on the roof of that vehicle.